Yeah, towards the end of the meeting when you were...
Talking about the whistleblower.
Yes.
We're in the middle of the whistleblower.
Yes, we were discussing whistleblowers and asking administration. You did make that comment.
Yes. And it wasn't like mumbled like I can often do. It was very clear what I was saying, right?
Yes.
This has nothing to do with you three.
Correct, because you were passionate about the whistleblower side of the house and about people coming in, making sure that there's no repercussions, and you wanted to make sure it was clear to them that when you were discussing this, it wasn't referring to them.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's more than a little bit significant. I think it's a little more than a little bit significant. You know, for them to claim then that they felt, I don't know how much clearer I could have made the fact that my comments had nothing to do with them and that I respected them, those three too, just by virtue of the fact that they got the job, quite frankly, and Ms. Lebomsky because I know her to be a good principal. And I think the board, so I think, so how they go from that and those comments to then making these comments that they felt intimidated, I still don't know. I still don't know. As I've said before, frustrated, blunt, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, it is frustrating trying to make progress within the public school system. I mean, here we are discussing, I mean, and you know, I guess fairly so, me and the conduct of the board member, and none of these other issues that I was trying to raise at that meeting are being dealt with. You know, I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that.
I saw a couple of hands pop up over here, John.
I read this report and see an awful lot of subjective language.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, everyone does. I'm not suggesting I'm alone in that. I see that, let's see. The administrators used words such as bullying, harassing, threatening, and intimidating to describe his conduct. And we go further down the report, and it turns out that I think you agree with that.
I agree with some of that.
Yeah.
I think it's a fact that I would report, Mr. Kisco, that those were words that they used, and you know, I then parsed those, and I don't agree that it was either threatening, one, two, bullying. I say no to that. But they did certainly, I mean, I think there was some inappropriate comments there. I would also add that I try to be very careful to say that Mr. Cavagnero did not intend to harass or intimidate any specific person.
But harass has a legal meaning, hasn't it? The others don't necessarily, but I think in school contracts, I think in school law, there's a legal definition of harassment?
I think we could probably debate a lot of different definitions of harassment. It means something in sexual harassment terms, and this was not that circumstance. And harassment, you know, in some cases can be used as a synonym for bullying. But you know, what I don't do in here, and maybe this is the direct way to answer your question, is to say, and this harassment violated XYZ statute. Because I don't think there is one that specifically would apply in that. You may be correct that there are cases, and I would defer to the board's counsel on the application of the use of the word harassment in school and education context. But I would say, based on my experience and the generalized concept as I understand harassment, which includes the kind of comments, this kind of conduct here, in my view, could rise to the level of harassment. So I would include that. I don't accept it as bullying. I don't accept it as threatening.
But doesn't harassment have to be repeated? And it would seem like one meeting wouldn't give you enough of a basis for using the word harassment.
That is a good, and it's a very good point. You could argue that this was only one isolated incident. I did consider all of the conduct that included at that meeting, and there are times also when the courts have recognized that the frequency of the conduct is not the determining factor, and you can have single incidents, and I did view this as a collection of incidents. It's also relevant why I asked if there was other similar behavior at other board meetings, and I do find that there was some of that, although I don't come up with a lot of specific examples on that.
But to call it harassment, it would have to be directed at these same people, wouldn't it? I mean, to agree that it's harassment based on what you heard about what happened or what you saw in videos. And I have no disrespect at all for your methods or in any other way that you conducted this. But I think it's hard to harass somebody in one meeting. I think even the dictionary wouldn't agree with that, let alone the law.
Well, it is why I use words to say that, you know, that I believe the behavior was unprofessional, that it was inappropriate, it was disrespectful. You know, I don't think you should take this report that I got and I had these reported to me by these 3 administrators, and I simply said, I've taken everything that you said is true. I mean, they felt, for example, that the conduct was directed towards them. They have a different version of what Mr. Cavanero just explained as far as that comment. Yes, that comment was made, but they read it differently, and so that's probably the core of what happened at this meeting. And so perceptions were different, and what I bring to your attention is that I do believe it was inappropriate and disrespectful. I frankly, while I understand the terms of harassment, I didn't turn this into a legal argument, because if we do that, I think that misses the overall point.
Yeah, I'm just not sure where you get training for all board members in 2 of your recommendations from what happened at one meeting on one day.
I would say to that is that I have spent time looking at other board meetings. I have looked at the videos. I will tell you I didn't watch all 4 hours of each of these meetings, but I have looked at the September, August, and July videotapes that are available. I have reviewed minutes, and there are times when there's other conduct that, frankly, I was surprised to see. So that's where that comes from, and I did ask each of you about other similar circumstances. Again, I was not looking to expand my scope, but I did. One of the troubling aspects of this, frankly, was that the board members who were present. I mean, I got, and in effect, people who sat at the same meeting, and the administrators were really bothered by it. Whether you call that harassment, whatever you call that, they were really bothered that that occurred. And the board members who were there weren't. And I struggle with that. And I think that's something, that's what led to that recommendation.
Well, but you're putting personal things into this then.
No, I'm not putting anything
Well, it
personal.
sounded like that's what you just said. That
No.
you were surprised at the way board members were willing to accept behavior, tolerate behavior that you wouldn't.
This was not a personal, I tell you, I was surprised. And so that's how I came out with that.
Okay.
But I don't believe that was personal, it was the observations of that, and I have spent some time looking at this.
Right, but Chuck, just for the record, you don't believe that there was harassment. The findings in this is that there wasn't any harassment.
What I say here, when I go through the legal analysis, I certainly say it's not sexual harassment, and I was careful at the as I put the words here that I say that first off, he did not intentionally direct his actions towards these administrators. I don't believe there was illegal or criminal acts, physical threats, sexual harassment, or abusive behavior. Mr. Traub, I say that he's unprofessional, he's inappropriate. I don't specifically come here at the end and say this was harassment, but I will say that the conduct certainly, in my view, gets much closer to harassment than it does to abusiveness or bullying. I would rule those out.
Okay, but you don't feel it got there.
But your language would suggest that you do, because it says that these, let's see, Mr. Cavanero did not intend to harass or intimidate. So you're saying he harassed, but did not do so intentionally.
I said his conduct was perceived as such. That's the words I actually used.
Well, there's a
What page are you
period
on,
before,
John?
I'm on the next to the last, continuing to the last page. Mr. Cavanero did not intend to harass or intimidate any specific person. But what I read that to mean is that he did it, but just didn't intend to do it. And I don't think that's an accusation that's borne out by anything else we've heard.
Well, I say that his conduct was perceived as such. I believe the administrators perceived that they were being harassed. I don't say that, frankly, to answer Mr. Traub's question directly. Maybe the lawyer answer is that I don't say one way or the other in this report whether it was harassment. But I also didn't think I need to reach that conclusion. I do find that that I don't find that it was bullying. I don't find that it was threatening, and he didn't intend to do that. But do I think the conduct was inappropriate? The answer is yes. Do I think it was unprofessional? Yes. Was it disrespectful? Yes. And can that be, you are right, there are a variety of definitions of harassment. And could you look at that as harassment? Yes. I also get it that you could say it doesn't rise to the same level of harassment that an organization might not be able to deal with or address and avoid liability. So I appreciate you raising that. That is one that I acknowledge to you that I could argue strongly that yes, it is, or no, that it isn't.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple things. Just to go to what Mr. Nargi was talking about earlier, I share your frustration with the superintendent's contract and sort of how we've been handling that. I think if we have past practice, I think that sort of does set a precedent to some extent. But quite frankly, I don't care if the superintendent put Mickey Mouse there. It doesn't warrant any inappropriate, unprofessional, or insensitive behavior, whatever the context for the individual's frustration is, in my opinion. So just hearing from Mr. Cavanero, I understand that you were frustrated and you were blunt. We voted, I think, unanimously to hire an outside source to investigate this.
7-3.
7-3. Well, we voted in favor, yourself included, to perform this investigation. This is what was concluded, that you were inappropriate, unprofessional, and insensitive. Are you contesting that?
Wait, you can't just grill him like that. That moves to a hearing phase. You're asking him to testify or to answer a cross-examination, and we can't get into that.
Well, I think he openly, when he gave his...
He openly offered his comments. You
Okay.
can't request that comment without us moving into a hearing phase.
All right.
Okay? I just, that's what I'm saying.
No, I appreciate that, and I understand that makes perfect sense. I just think that, we're supposed to make a decision and without having all the facts, and we hired an outside source, but we're questioning that, and we don't know all the facts. I mean, I don't know where we proceed from that.
Well, we proceed to agenda item O. No, Mr. Nardi.
You used on page 3, you state the administrators used words such as bullying, harassing, threatening, intimidating. Those are actual words that these 3 administrators used. They didn't just say, we think it was maybe bullying, harassing. No, their statement to you was bullying took place, harassing took place, threatening took place, intimidation took place. Is that what you're saying in this sentence?
Yes.
Those are their words.
Yes.
I think each one of those words has legal connotations to it, has legal meanings to them. I think for the administrators, if those were what you say are their words, those are words that need to be examined as far as his conduct. I don't think we as a board can just overlook that. If people in this district who work for this district want to make allegations like that and not be able to substantiate them, or if the board is not willing to make the accusers substantiate those words, then I think the board would be doing a disservice to the board. I think it's now our obligation to go forward and have these administrators prove that their statements, that they can factually prove their statements.
Well, that's what the investigation was for, was to take their statements and see if it could be proven. And if you read further down in the conclusions...
No, that's not the issue I'm talking about. Whether or not I'm talking about employees making these statements of fact. I just asked him, were these statements of fact that these 3 people employed in articulating what they perceived took place? And if that's what they're saying, then I think the board has a responsibility to have them come forward and actually justify what they're saying.
Then you would vote for a hearing.
I would vote for a hearing because they now have to show that they acted reasonably. that they did not act with any type of malice towards Mr. Cavanero.
But we're here to talk about Mr. Cavanero.
No, you can't you just can't.
Andrew, the complaint and the task of this investigation was to look into the conduct of a board member. If you want to go to another investigation, you can bring that up, but this one was for the conduct.
No, that, when you open the investigation, you don't have the legal authority to say that everything that is learned in this investigation will be excluded now, because the scope of our investigation was so limited to only look at what the accuser wanted to allege. When the accuser makes these statements, now the accuser is also part of a situation that arose to the board, that we have to look at what they're saying and how they said it, why they said it, and if it was appropriate for them to say. They opened the door. You opened the door by having this whole independent investigator take place.
We opened the door.
Well, I
They
didn't.
opened the door.
No, I didn't. I voted against it.
The
Mr.
board.
Chapman.
It wasn't me. It was the board.
Yeah, I understand that.
Well, you didn't say that, if that's what you understand. You say you want to be clear and
Well,
specific.
you know,
No,
like,
you're-
well,
wait a minute, wait a minute.
Okay.
You're challenging the words that somebody else is saying,
Right.
and that they have to defend it. I'm challenging yours. You're saying me. It was not me. This was a board vote. So I think you have to be careful of what you say.
Who initiated to have this go forward to the board?
I set the agenda.
You set the agenda.
Yes.
So you're the one who set up the whole concept of having an independent investigator.
And we brought it, and they discussed it, and the board voted on it.
But when I said you're the one who initiated it, to do this process.
I initiated that there was.
Because I don't really know how the process started.
There
As
was a
usual,
complaint.
there was a complaint that you never saw the complaint. You just verbally heard it
Verbal
from
complaints.
the superintendent.
Verbal complaints on harassment
Right.
are just as binding.
So
as
now you're
written
saying the
complaint.
complaint was harassment, yet these are talking about words,
There
bullying,
was
threatening, and intimidating.
Conduct, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say harassing, I should say
But
conduct.
the
of a
word
board
was
member.
harassment.
And I just changed the word to conduct.
You
of
see,
a
that's what
board
happens
member.
when nothing's in writing, and that all we have is verbal communication with the superintendent and the complainant.
All right. Is there any other discussion about the report, or do we move on to agenda number 4? Seeing no other discussion, possible action for investigation of the conduct of a board member. Fiona.
I would like to put forward my motion to accept the recommendation with the exception of number 2, removing number 2, but keeping all of the other recommendations.
You would like to make a motion?
To accept the findings?
Yep.
To accept the recommendations with the exception of item number 2.
But he wasn't charged to do recommendations, he was charged to give us a report. So you accept the findings of his report, and further would like to recommend.
That we consider his recommendations with the exception of number 2.
Is it possible to divide this, because there's really 2 issues, accepting the report
Okay.
and then following the recommendations.
No, I don't.
Would you like to make a motion?
I move we accept the report minus the recommendations.
We're gonna, what did we deem the last motion as?
Would it, in the order of motions, you have to consider that unless it's withdrawn before.
I withdraw my
Okay.
motion.
You withdraw yourself.
John?
Yeah, with the understanding that I don't necessarily agree with the findings, I move we accept the report minus the recommendations, which weren't asked for.
All right, motion to accept the report minus the recommendation. That's it. We have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I need clarification. Meaning there would be no action, it would go no further.
No,
Well, it
he's
was-
just accepting the report without the recommendations.
What
and then
happens
the
after
board-
that, I don't know, but I think we have to accept the report before we can do anything
Okay.
else.
Okay, just
We
needed that
accept the
clarification.
report is here, we're just
Okay.
receiving it.
All right.
Whether we agree with it or not.
But the item is possible action on the investigation.
And that's
Yeah, receiving the report.
Well,
Yeah.
So
we're
actually
on
it's
3,
just
we
accept-
received the report. John is saying he's making a motion to receive the report.
We're still on 3.
Yes.
We're on-
On his, we're still on 3 to take a motion to accept the report minus the recommendations, and then we're going to go on to further actions.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
So by receipt of the investigation, we're not making any type of inference that we're agreeing with the
I
investigation.
preface my remarks with that exact sentiment.
So all we're doing is just that we accept.
This
the
vote
report.
is to accept the report,
Just to receive the, yes, to accept the
Minus the
report.
recommendation.
minus the recommendations. So most of page 6 will be that.
No, that's his report. We're accepting the report in totality. Or you're saying you don't.
His motion is to accept the report minus the recommendations.
Because we didn't ask for recommendations. I'm moving we accept that part of the report we asked for. Just accept it, recognize that it occurred without agreeing or disagreeing.
Right.
Attorney Stoller's done a great job of what we asked him to do and went
You
beyond.
can vote no, Andrew.
Well, and it's not that I want to vote no or yes, I just,
But
I'm
the
not
motion-
really positive that you divide the report and say, we're gonna receive and accept some of the report, but we're not, what's your,
This is obiter dictum. Anything
Yep.
after 6 is obiter dictum, 4 is obiter dictum. It's something said by the side. Oh, by the way, here's what else I think.
but I mean, he put together a
Yeah,
report.
but the motion that he's made.
What we're discussing, I'm just trying to understand.
Right, okay.
I mean, I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying that my thought is that he put together a report, it's pages 1 through 6. So you either accept what he did in its totality, or you don't accept his report at all. I don't think that it's appropriate to say, we're going to accept some of what we like, some of what we don't like, some of it really
Then you should
wasn't
vote
what.
against my motion.
Yeah, then you vote against the motion.
Yeah, what we're discussing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm only discussing
Someone
it.
wanna move the discussion?
I want to move this.
Okay, well, now we're moving the discussion to a vote. All those in favor of it, accepting the motion from John to accept the report without the recommendations? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? Abstentions? 1 abstention, Mr. Cavanero. Opposed were Marola and Nargi. And I'm recused from the vote. So I guess make it 2 abstentions. 2 abstentions, because I'm out. All right. Would you
Now
like
I
to
would
make a
like
motion
to
for the
make a
third time?
motion that we receive or
Just read it, because it's
approve
not-
the recommendation with the exception of item number 2.
What you would have to do, because we don't have these recommendations officially, is
Ah.
tell us what you would like to do.
Sorry, we can't do that anymore.
I'd like to make a motion that the following action be taken regarding the investigation. That some action be taken with Mr. Cavanero to recognize that his conduct at the SIC meeting was inappropriate, consider having him apologize, and clarify that it was not directed personally at the administrators. Training for all board members on communication and techniques. Training for all board members about appropriate interaction with the superintendent and staff. Implementation of formal guidelines governing behavior at board and committee meetings, including on such topics as use of time, respect, courtesy, agenda setting, minute responsibilities, Robert rules, and other policies. This could be accomplished by the adoption of a board handbook with the accompanying training. Ensure that there is no retaliation in any form against the administrators who raised this complaint.
Second by Chris. Discussion. Paul?
In an effort to keep this simple, if the board adopts 1, 5, and 6, I think 2, 3, and 4 become redundant because they would roll into 5. If the board proceeds with recommendation number 5, that should take care of 2, 3, and 4. You know what I'm saying?
Just for clarification's sake, Paul, the reason number 2 is removed is the board cannot demand anything of a particular board member. So we would have no authority to do that. So that's why that's automatically got to go.
But I think training, I think the 2, 3, and 4 training could easily be included. I mean, that would be the effective time.
3 and 4, you mean, not 2.
Yeah, 3 and 4,
Yeah,
training
but-
of the board for communication styles and for appropriate interaction.
Correct.
I think the intent is to have a retreat to discuss that, and then also have policy tune up the bylaws to
Yeah.
include. So that, I think that's the intent.
I'm not sure what's, all I'm saying is that I think 5 is all encompassing of items 3 and 4. I think if 5 is carried, if 5 is done effectively, it encompasses what is being requested in 3 and 4. You know what I'm saying? If it's a properly facilitated meeting, you get into board communications, you get into the relationship between roles and responsibilities. Years ago, we used to have roles and responsibilities workshops every year, and we would do exactly this kind of thing. So that's just a recommendation. As far as the apology and well, let the board do what it's going to do.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote against this because I think that these allegations are very severe. The conduct of the procedural aspects, the substantive issues involved in this, the fact that we spent or will spend, based upon the final bill of having 2 attorneys present tonight in this investigation, will run into, I assume, in excess of $1,000. I do not believe that we should just not get to the substantive truth of right and wrong. We paid the money, we're gonna pay the money, now let's go forward. When these types of allegations are made, you need to have a hearing, you need to find out who spoke truthfully, what procedures were that were done correctly, what procedures were done that were incorrectly done, and that's where I stand.
I'll be voting against this too for some of Mr. Nargi's reasons, but also because we're firing a shotgun here, and it's going to hit all of us. I don't know why all board members need to be trained on communication styles and techniques and about appropriate interaction with the superintendent and staff. I don't think Mr. Cavaniero needs it either. The voters have sent Mr. Cavaniero back to us, and we are elected officials several times. And I don't think Mr. Cavaniero has changed in any of the time I've been watching the board since the meetings were first televised live, and at Mr. Cavaniero's request are now being televised again. Mr. Cavaniero is a known quantity. I think we are all known quantities, and if we aren't, people shouldn't vote for us. You know, I don't like the idea that we should all somehow feel the pain of the guilt, especially when I don't see any guilt here anyway. You know, I call this a witch hunt when we voted for the investigation. I still think it was a witch hunt. We looked for a witch. You find what you look for. We found a witch. And now, you know, I didn't bring the twigs and matches, but I assume that that might be the next logical step. Only it might not be at Mr. Cavaniero. It might be any one of us when somebody thinks, oh, I feel intimidated, I feel bullied, I feel harassed. I just don't buy any of that. I think Mr. Cavaniero has the right to behave the way he has. I have seen Mr. Cavaniero get excited, and that's all I would say it is. You know, I grew up in this town. You know, I'm voting against it. And there are other reasons to vote against it too. But I don't share the guilt, not at all. And I don't think Mr. Cavaniero has any guilt associated with it either.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the owner's motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed?
Oh, yeah, well, I made the motion.
Well, we've had people vote against their own motions. Are you in the motion?
I'm in the motion.
Okay, can we have the yeses again, please? Brady, Marola, Rivera, Hona, Capabianca, and Debo. Opposed? Kisco and Nargi. Abstentions would be Cavanero and Trout. Motion to adjourn?
Excuse me, point of order. Point of order.
Yes.
The result of that vote is what to me specifically? I am to apologize?
To apologize to the people at that meeting who deemed your,
And what form is that apology supposed to take?
informal.
Fine, and for the purpose of moving off of this discussion to take up other matters before the board, like a real bullying policy, like a real whistleblower policy, like automatic expulsion of predator students who are raping our middle school girls. Several more.
Point of order.
What is that?
What I'm saying is, in order to move off of this discussion, I will apologize tonight. Will that suffice, or do I need to do it in person?
I would think you would do it.
In person?
Yeah. You could even be in the next school, which is scheduled for October 3rd.
That would be fine.
Can I ask a procedural question, Mr. Chairman? Sure. Why did I hear about this meeting the day before from someone else, the day before I heard it from you?
I can't answer that.
Oh, so you notified some people ahead of time and other people later?
I called certain people that were going to be key to it to see what their schedule was and if we could rearrange.
Key to it. How did you decide who was key to it?
Talked to Mr. Cavanero because he was relatively key to it.
Yeah.
I talked to the other two members of leadership, and then I went to the administration.
Thank you.
Motion
Motion to adjourn.
And second, Carl. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?